Have you ever felt that you are in the wrong job? And I don't just mean wrong in the sense of those days when you can barely get out of bed, grumbling about the pay or the boss, but the kind that gets into your bones, makes your skin itch, and leaves a whisper in your gut saying, "You don't belong here." My job is exactly like that. I work alone as a lighthouse keeper in a place called Black Ridge Point. Chances are you've never heard of it, and honestly, it's better that way. It doesn't show up on any popular maps. Tourists don't come here. Even the locals pretend it doesn't exist. And you know what? They're right. Because it feels like Black Ridge Point shouldn't have ever existed, as if the earth regrets allowing it to be born. Normally, a lighthouse is supposed to help ships, shining a light so they don't crash against the rocks and get lost at sea. That's exactly what I thought when I took this position. I thought I would be doing something good, useful, maybe even noble. But here, in this lighthouse, the light doesn't guide anyone. It cages something. It keeps it contained. The beam of light isn't an invitation, but a warning. And tonight is not like the others. Today, I found what I wasn't supposed to find. I wasn't looking for anything unusual when I stumbled upon it. It was an ordinary night shift, one of the hundreds I've spent in this cold, salt-eaten tower that groans with every gust of wind. It seems like after 2 years, I should have gotten used to everything, but this place always keeps something up its sleeve, right up until you think you're safe. That night, I decided to clean the storage room, just to somehow break the endless silence. The room was full of old forgotten junk, broken lanterns, rusty tools, thick manuals that hadn't been opened in decades. It smelled of mold, old wood, and something else. Something pungent that irritated my throat. I was moving a pile of old magazines brought in by former workers when I saw it. A sheet of yellowed, brittle paper, wedged between the back wall and a shelf. I pulled it out. The paper rustled under my fingers. No title, no signature. Just 7 rules written in a trembling hand, as if the person who wrote them hadn't slept in weeks. And these rules didn't seem like something someone made up for fun. They felt real, suffered. Lock the door exactly at 2300. If you hear knocking after that, do not open it. The one you would want to see wouldn't knock. That was the first line. Simple, but it gave me goosebumps. The light must be kept on constantly. If it flickers, you must turn it back on immediately, even if it means having to go outside. My heart skipped a beat. I had done that before, going outside when the power went out during a storm. I thought it was normal. That kind of maintenance was just part of the job. After midnight, do not look at the water. If you hear someone call your name, lie. If the water tries to speak to you, stay silent and do not answer. I gasped for air. I remembered how once it seemed like someone was shouting from the cliffs. I was on the verge of calling back. If you see a person standing on the edge of the cliff, do not acknowledge their presence. Do not speak. Do not approach. A cold sweat ran down my spine. I had seen someone like that just a few weeks ago. I thought it was a trick of the light. You must leave at exactly 4 o'clock in the morning, not a minute before, not a minute after. I always left around 4, but never exactly at that time. I didn't know it was important. Maybe it is. When a thick fog rolls in, do not look out the window. You might see what you wouldn't want to. I thought of the nights when the fog got so thick, I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. I only looked out the window so I wouldn't feel so alone. Every new moon the ship will return. Do not acknowledge it. Do not try to stop it. Do not look. This rule struck me the most. I hadn't seen any ship, but tonight there was only a thin crescent in the sky. The new moon was approaching. I stood there staring at the list. My hands shook slightly, gripping the edges of the paper. The air around me seemed to thicken, as if the room itself was holding its breath. At first, I let out a weak, trembling laugh. I thought maybe it was just an old prank by the previous keeper, some creepy tradition to scare the rookie. But the longer I held that paper, the louder the silence became, as if the whole lighthouse were watching me. And deep in my soul, I understood something. This wasn't just a warning. It was a challenge, a test. And without knowing it, I was already following some of the rules. I was already playing this game, whether I liked it or not. I tried to distract myself. I really tried. I paced back and forth across the main floor of the lighthouse, picked up a dusty book from a small table, turned the pages without seeing a single word, and even turned on a small battery-operated radio, hoping to catch some fuzzy station from the mainland. But I only heard static, and all the while, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They shook as if I had been out in the cold too long, even though the thick stone walls of the lighthouse kept the wind out. It wasn't cold, it was fear. A cold, silent, lurking fear. The first rule seemed simple when I read it. Lock the door at exactly 2300. Easy, right? Just turn the key and walk away. That's what I did. I walked over to the heavy iron door at the bottom of the spiral staircase and turned the lock. Then again, just to be sure. The metal squealed in protest, as if it didn't want to be shut. That should have been my first clue. And then, at exactly 2303, I heard it. The knocking began. 3 slow, clear knocks. Then, silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, waiting to see what you'll do. I froze in place, my eyes wide. I didn't expect this to actually happen. I didn't even remember hearing knocks before tonight. But now that I was really listening, really paying attention, I realized it. I had heard it before. Subconsciously, perhaps, but deep in my brain, that sound was stored, like a memory that isn't really yours. And then it hit me. This happened every night. I just didn't notice it. Or maybe I didn't want to notice it. I backed away from the door. The lighthouse was on a cliff. There was no way anyone could just walk up here like that. There's a narrow path from the shore, and the rocks below are sharp and unforgiving. You would hear a person walking up that path. Their footsteps would echo, but tonight I heard nothing. And then, "Hey!" The voice hit me like a slap. Masculine, deep, a bit raspy, as if it hadn't been used in a long time. But there was something about it that wasn't right. Like a song sung by someone who knows all the words but doesn't understand the meaning. Too even, too cautious. I think I'm lost," the voice said. I didn't move. I clenched my jaw until it ached. I stared at the door as if I could reach out and brace myself against it. Getting lost here at night. That made no sense. I don't know why, but I was certain that voice couldn't belong to this place. "Please," it said again, softer this time, as if trying to sound weak. "I don't have much time. You have to let me in." I almost walked up to the door. Something in me wavered. A reflex, an instinct, that old human habit of helping those in need. But then my eyes fell on the paper I had shoved into my jacket pocket. Rule number 1, do not open the door. My fingers curled into the fabric. I stepped back. The voice continued, pleading, begging, insisting. Each word more convincing than the last. It tried to sound scared, then kind, then angry. But I remained motionless, my mouth shut. Then, without warning, the voice simply stopped. Silence, not a single breath. And then, footsteps. But they weren't the footsteps that echo on the stone path. No, these were different. There was no crunch of gravel, no brushing against bushes, just a soft, rhythmic padding, as if feet were stepping on empty air. They didn't head back down the path. They didn't fade into the woods. They just walked out into the pitch-black night that stretched beyond the lighthouse, like an endless sea of nothingness. I wasn't breathing. Then something slid under the door, a soft, raspy sound, like paper on stone. I stared at the crack beneath the door, a bloodied sheet of paper, not just stained, but soaked in dark reddish-brown spots. I hesitated. My fingers hovered over it, wavering. It could be a trick, it could be a trap, but leaving it there felt even worse. So carefully, I picked it up. The edges were sticky. The smell was metallic, acrid, nauseating. I slowly unfolded it. There were words on it, shaky, handwritten lines, just like the rules, but smaller, more illegible. I started reading, but I didn't get far, because the moment my eyes hit the second line, the light flickered, not smoothly or softly. It was a harsh glitch. It flashed off, then on, and for the first time that night, I knew I wasn't alone. When I looked at the clock, it read exactly 12 a.m. midnight. Barely had my eyes registered the time when the lighthouse beam, my only real defense against the nightmares hiding at Black Ridge Point, sharply flickered once, then again. 1, 2, and then darkness. The beam, which normally swept steadily across the black ocean, simply vanished, faded away. Just like that, no warning, no hum of power slowly dying down. It just shut off. And in that instant, something deep inside me understood. This isn't just a glitch. This isn't normal. The second rule, I remembered it clearly now. The light must be kept on constantly. If it flickers, you must turn it back on immediately, even if it means having to go outside. An icy shock of panic pierced my chest. My throat closed up. My heart beat so fast it felt like it would break my ribs. I blindly fumbled for a flashlight on the nearest table, grabbed it with trembling hands, and ran toward the stairs. The old spiral steps groaned under my feet as I rushed up to the lantern room. The cold hit me halfway up, an unnatural cold, not just the chill of sea air. It was wrong. By the time I reached the top, I could see my breath. Thick white clouds billowed from my mouth like smoke from a bonfire. My fingers were already going numb. The metal railing burned my skin like ice, and then the light above me dimmed into a soft glow and died. Everything plunged into darkness, total, absolute darkness. I turned on the flashlight. A weak yellow beam cut through the room like a knife, shaking along with my hand. I aimed it at the generator. My heart pounded, the sound of its beating echoing in my ears louder than the wind outside. I hit the main switch. Nothing. No sparks, no humming, nothing. My breath hitched. I moved to the emergency generator. Hope clung to me like a life preserver, but something stopped me. It wasn't a sound, it wasn't a touch, just a feeling. That same creepy sensation that makes your skin crawl. The feeling of being watched, of someone being there. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. Something was standing outside, motionless, right on the edge of the cliff, right where the light normally didn't reach. It wasn't human. It looked human if you squinted from far away and had never seen one before. The outline, the shape, but something was off. Too tall, too skinny. Its arms hung in a way that made my stomach churn. And where the face should have been, there was only a blurry smudge of swirling darkness. No eyes, no mouth, just the suggestion of a head shifting like smoke trapped in a jar. It didn't move. It just stood there, watching me. be the lighthouse. Either way, the message was clear. The light had gone out, and that was waiting. I turned back to the generator. My hands barely obeyed me because of the cold. They slipped off the handles a couple of times before I managed to grip the ignition switch. I looked over my shoulder. The figure took a step forward. Panic overtook me. I slammed the ignition with the palm of my hand. Come on, come on, come on. With a loud roar, the generator coughed, sputtered, and finally roared to life. The light above me clicked on. It didn't flicker. It burst forth, piercing the foggy night like a sword of fire. The entire room filled with a warm, blinding glare. I turned around and looked toward the cliff. The lump in my throat vanished. The figure was gone. Not a trace, not a footprint, not a whisper in the wind, just the night, and this damn endless sea. What was that? I whispered, as if saying it out loud would make it real. My heart beat frantically in my chest, loud and erratic, like an alarm drum. My thoughts spun, refusing to settle down. Every passing second made the silence around me heavier, as if it were pressing on my lungs. I tried to distract myself, clumsily moving from one unfinished task to another, checking the oil level, adjusting the light beams, wiping down surfaces that were already clean, anything to keep my hands busy and calm my mind. But no matter what I did, that sharp feeling of anxiety only grew stronger. People don't go to work at a lighthouse for fun. No one dreams of spending months isolated in a cold, creaky tower by the sea, cut off from the world. You don't wake up one day and say, I want to be left alone with foghorns and the sea breeze. No, you end up here because you're running, hiding, escaping. My reason was simple. I had nothing left, nothing to hold on to, nothing to keep me in the world I once called home. I grew up in a quiet little town on the edge of a reservation, in one of those places where stories floated in the air and people still nodded at the unseen. My grandfather was a proud, wrinkled old man who had survived too much and spoke very little. He would sit by the fire and tell us stories that felt more like warnings than fairy tales. He spoke of spirits that didn't stay dead, of voices that called from the water, and of the fog that brought more than just moisture. As a child, I didn't think much of it. I thought it was just part of our culture, a way to scare kids into behaving. But then the accident happened. My wife, my little boy, gone. A rainy night, a slippery road, and then simply nothingness. After that, everything my grandfather said started to sound less like a myth and more like a memory. All I wanted was to disappear, to stop hearing the echo of toys no one plays with anymore, to stop seeing her mug in the cupboard and their shoes by the door. I needed silence, distance, emptiness. That's why, when the job at the Black Ridge Lighthouse came up, I took it without hesitation. The pay was good, the demands were few, and best of all, no one asked questions. But now I'm starting to wonder, did I choose this place, or did it choose me? I tried to chase those thoughts away, telling myself I was just tired, that grief does strange things to the mind. I sat down to drink a coffee again. The mug trembled in my hand. Then the old grandfather clock struck 12:30, and I heard her voice. "Hey," I yelled, more out of habit than hope. But the hair on my arm stood up. The voice came from outside, down by the water, and it spoke my name. Clear, soft, familiar. My whole body tensed. My mouth went dry. Rule number 3 of the Black Ridge Keeper's Manual. After midnight, do not look at the water. At first, I joked about the rules, laughed at them, as if they were some weird prank for rookies when I first got here. But I'd always followed them, until now, because this voice, This voice wasn't just any voice. It was my mother's voice, and she's been dead for 10 years. No, 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 I whispered. But even as I said it, my feet began to move, as if they didn't care about the rules, as if they belonged to someone else. I walked over to the small round window, the one that offered a perfect view of the sea. I didn't even realize I was crying until the salt from my tears burned the corners of my lips. "Come here, please. I need you." That voice. It was her. The tender way she used to call me when dinner was ready. The way she used to soothe me when I cried after having nightmares. My hands gripped the windowsill. My knees froze. My brain screamed, "Don't do it." But my heart whispered, "What if?" Then I saw something. The water wasn't calm. It was churning, almost convulsing, as if it were panicking. That wasn't approaching through the water. It was repelling it. The water bubbled, swirled, and pulled back in slow, hesitant waves, as if it wanted nothing to do with what was emerging from below. I couldn't breathe because the thing started to take shape. Not a man, not a woman, not any creature I had ever seen or read about, but a living, wrong, impossible shape. It had no place in this world. "No, no, what the hell is that?" I whispered. My voice cracked, and for the first time in my life, I understood that water, the very thing we need to exist, the thing that brings life, peace, and tranquility, could be terrifying. Oh God, oh Lord. My survival instincts kicked in hard and fast. My eyes squeezed shut without my permission, and then came a scratching sound right on the glass. Slow, screeching, like fingernails dragging one after another. I froze, holding my breath. The only thing I heard was the pulsing of blood in my ears. Then, silence. Not a voice, not a whisper. When I dared to open my eyes, the window was fogged over with thick condensation, and on the glass, clear as day, was written, "Do not break the rules." In that moment, I was broken, completely hollow inside and out. My nerves were like exposed wires sparking at every sound. My fingers wouldn't stop shaking, even when I clenched them into fists. I felt a tightness in my chest, as if something heavy had settled inside and refused to move. I kept telling myself that if I could just hold out until morning, everything would be fine. Maybe all of this would feel like a dream, a horrible, twisted dream. I just had to hold on, but my body no longer believed my thoughts. I was as tired and scared as a person can be. I don't even remember how the hours passed after what happened at the window. One moment, it was shortly after midnight, and then it was almost 4. My mind stopped keeping track of time, as if it knew it didn't want to be awake for what came next. At 3:45, the world shifted again. It started with a smell, damp and heavy, like rotting seaweed and wet rope. Then came the fog, thick, far too thick. It rolled in, as if it had a mind of its own, wrapping the lighthouse in heavy blankets. It suffocated the light. I could barely see the edge of my own desk. It wasn't the kind of fog that just hides the view. It devoured sound too. Everything became muffled, silent. I tried not to look up. I really tried. I stared at the floor, blinked fast, focused on the beating of my own heart. But then I heard it. Wood, old wood creaking under pressure. Then another sound, metallic, deep, and hollow. It echoed in the distance, like a bell swung by an invisible hand. A ship's bell. I held my breath. Carefully, like a child hiding under the covers, I turned my head just enough to peek out the window again. The fog was so thick I thought I wouldn't see anything. But then, faintly, like a memory emerging from a deep sleep, I saw it. The ship, barely visible, like a shadow in the fog. It glided over the surface of the ocean too smoothly, too quietly. No splashing, no waves breaking around the hull. It didn't disturb the water at all. It just moved in silence, as if it weren't part of the world we know. Its sails were torn, flapping softly, like old cloth left to rot. The ship's wood was cracked, faded, and yet it remained upright, as if stubbornly refusing to sink. It was wrong. That ship didn't belong to this era, maybe not to any era. And then I saw the figures. They stood along the deck, watching motionlessly. They looked like people, but they weren't quite human anymore. Some were missing arms. One had no face, just smooth, pale skin stretched where its features should have been. Several stood with their mouths wide open, wide and empty. Their jaws hung in endless screams, but none of them made a sound. They just stared. Each and every one of them was looking toward the lighthouse, toward me. I was paralyzed, unable to look away. My skin pulled tight, my legs went numb. I couldn't run. I couldn't even blink. Then, one of the figures moved. It raised its hand, not in greeting, nor in peace. It pointed directly at me. I almost threw up. My stomach churned. My mind screamed, demanding an explanation. But deep in my soul, down where I didn't want to look, I already knew everything. This wasn't a forgotten horror story passed down by word of mouth by drunk sailors. This was real, all of it. The rules, the whispers, the scratches on the window, the voice that sounded like my mother, the ship. It kept coming back, again and again and again. And now I understood why. The bloody paper I had found earlier that night, crumpled and shoved behind the logs, told the truth. I hadn't understood it before. I hadn't wanted to understand it. But now it all made perfect, horrifying sense. The last keeper, he made a mistake. Just one. He let the lighthouse beam go out, even if only for a minute. And in that minute, the sea took what it wanted. The ship crashed. People died. Now, every new moon the ship returned, searching, wanting, not for answers, but for revenge. And if it couldn't find the one who failed, it would take the one who came to replace him. Me. My legs gave out, but I caught myself on the table. I backed away from the window. I didn't want to watch it disappear. I didn't want to see those lifeless faces melt into the fog. But I knew it had vanished back into the sea. For now. And something inside me whispered a truth I didn't want to say out loud. It will be back. And next time, it might not leave empty-handed. I didn't let myself breathe again until my boots touched the damp stone outside the lighthouse at exactly 4 o'clock in the morning. The moment I stepped out into the open, my lungs filled with the sharp, cold air that hit me like a slap. The sky was starting to change. It wasn't dawn yet. It wasn't morning yet. Just that eerie shade of grey that makes everything look uncertain. The fog still clung to everything. Not as thick as before, but heavy enough that the world still felt drowned and distant. As if the fog didn't want to let go of the night. As if it wanted to keep me there longer. I turned around slowly. Behind me, the lighthouse stood tall and silent. The golden beam of its spinning light cut cleanly through the fog, like a sword fending off the darkness. It was steady, reliable, a symbol of safety for anyone at sea. But to me, it no longer felt like a safe place. It felt like a warning. I had done what I was told. I hadn't broken any rules. I had kept the light on. I had kept my eyes where they belonged most of the time. I hadn't paid too much attention to voices I shouldn't listen to. I survived the night, but at what cost? And for how much longer will I be able to keep doing so? I stood there, staring at the rotating light, as if it could give me answers. For the past 2 years, I had told myself this place was peace. I had told myself I had found salvation in the silence, in the isolation. I had told myself I fled here to find quiet after my life was torn apart. But what if that was never true? What if I didn't come here to run from something? What if I was called here? That thought crept into my mind, slow and nauseating. What if I wasn't simply hiding from the pain, but was being punished for it? Maybe this wasn't a job. Maybe it was a sentence. Maybe Black Ridge didn't offer solitude. Maybe it offered a cage of fog and regrets. A place where people are sent to eternally feel the echo of every mistake out at sea. And suddenly, something became painfully clear. It doesn't matter how exactly I follow the rules. It doesn't matter how faithfully I stick to the routine, how bright I keep the light, how quiet I keep my thoughts. Someday, the lighthouse won't protect me. Someday, they won't let me go.